founded Fetched It. I'm Jo Parrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group, and I'm pleased you're joining us. We're all about diving into the fascinating world of gun dogs. Whether you're a beginner or have years of experience, there's something here for you. So get comfy and let's get this conversation started. Hello and welcome to another episode of LWDG Pod Dog. With me today is Lucy Hall, our LWDG regional organiser for the Midlands and a setter judge in her own right. And we're going to be talking all about the elegance and skill sets of the English Pointer and the 4 setter breeds. So before we started, how are you today, Lucy?
Very well, thanks, Jo. How are you?
I'm quite excited but quite nervous about this podcast because I will be honest, put my hand up and say I know nothing about the setter breeds. I've fallen in love with yours and sometimes think it would be a great idea to have one, but I don't really know anything about them, and I certainly don't know anything at all about an English Pointer. I'm not even sure if I've actually met one. So let's start first of all with your background, how you got into setters, how you became a judge, how you're involved in all that side of it.
So basically, I've just grown up with setters and pointers. My dad got interested when I was probably about 2, and he got his first English pointer. It was more a showbred bitch rather than a working bred bitch. And he got interested and went and found out a bit more about the trials and everything. And then he got himself a working bred pointer bitch. And then he kind of carried on from there. And so all my summer holidays have been spent up on the grouse moors, going to field trials and everything. He has mainly been an English pointer enthusiast. He has had a couple of English setters purely from his point of view because he's an A-panel judge. He thought that because pointers and setters are quite different in the way they work, he thought really that to be a proper all-round judge, he should really know about and work both breeds. Which I really respect that. I think that's a really lovely thing to do, and I hope to do that as well one day. But at the moment, I'm very much English setters. My passion for them kind of started, it was fueled by a lovely guy on the field trials who's kind of a legend on the field trials, Colin Organ. He had a lovely little English setter bitch that I fell in love with when I was about 13. Really beautiful. And then when we were about 25, when I was about 25, we used to go shooting up in the Angus Glens over the dogs, and a great friend of mine, Dom Gutorb of Upperwood English Setters, he had some cracking dogs. I mean, they were literally on fire that first season that we were up there, and he said, "Oh, would I be interested?" He was putting a couple of dogs together, Troy and Cleo, and from that I got Inca, my first little English setter bitch. So it's kind of started from there. I always thought that I would be working the dogs, having, grown up with my dad doing it and helping him. And I thought I'd have my own dogs from quite early on, say 18, 19. But I didn't actually get into probably until I was at my early 30s, just purely because other things got in the way, work, life. And I went and lived in London for a bit, so it wasn't obviously suitable to have the dogs. But now I have 3 English setters. I got Inca's nephew a couple of years ago, and accidentally, and you might think they're a bit close, but we had a pup arrive from the 2 of them earlier on this year in the spring. So I've got little Solo as well, who's 18 weeks, and I've spent this summer up on the moors in Durham and Scotland, training, grouse counting, and just working and trialing them. So I absolutely love it. It's where I escape to, and huge passion.
You've definitely become within our community the go-to setter person. That's always fantastic to see. If anybody asks a question, we find Lucy Hall straight away. But tell me a bit more, because I know very little about the setter. So if we start with them. But I do know that they're one of those breeds that are marked by the Kennel Club as being not in danger to being extinct, but their numbers are dwindling to a really low level, aren't they?
Yes, very much so. I think mainly because shooting has changed. So over the years, way back, the estates generally did a lot of shooting over dogs, i.e. the pointers and setter breeds. So that they had huge kennels on site at the estates to go out and take guns over them. Then obviously driven shooting has grown, and that took over. So those kennels were not required anymore. So the dogs weren't required, and they didn't breed anymore. It's funny that over in Europe, English setters they bred in huge numbers. I mean, in the thousands. Whereas over here in the UK, when it's our own breed, for example, the English setter, you only have 200 or 300 bred a year, and predominantly those are showbred setters. And that's another thing just to make a point of, is that it's sad as well as the fact that the working breeds of setters and the show breeds are now becoming two very distinct different breeds, purely because the show setters are larger, bigger coats, whereas the working bred ones are smaller, faster, less coat on them, and obviously more suitable to doing what they were bred for, which is going out, running at distance and finding and pointing game. But I think also the reason for the decline in the numbers is you've got labs and spaniels. You can go and train those dogs anywhere. You've got a scrubby, rough bit of ground. You can go on there with a spaniel and teach it everything it needs to then go on to a shooting day. Whereas if you take on a setter or English pointer, you need proper ground to train it on. You need vast expanse. I mean, I go round asking farmers down here in Oxfordshire, can I go and run my dogs on your do some training on your stubble or your spring barley or spring corn, because I spend loads of time driving up north to the grouse moors to go and train up there on the grouse, because you do need access to the ground, and you can't really simulate training for them like you can a spaniel, a lab, or indeed an HPR. You can use dummies for retrieves and everything. We don't actually retrieve with our dogs, predominantly. Some people do, but on the whole, we need live game to train them. We expect our dogs to be steady to flush, i.e. drop, and be steady to the gun. So you can't really ever simulate that without being on live game. So I think as well that kind of does make them not a popular dog to have. And I think with the rise in the HPRs and the interest in them and their popularity, because they're an all-rounder dog, hunt, point, retrieve, and they're possibly easier to have, makes the setters and pointers a declining type of dog.
It is actually quite tragic if you think about it, isn't it? Because like you said, the show breed, the working breed are separated out, so the actual numbers of working bred setters is really extremely dwindling. Plus on top of that, then this unavailability in the environment to cope with the dogs and training is only going to impact them more and more as we get access to less and less land. So we've got the 4 different breeds of setters. Take us through what they are and roughly why they're different, or are they different?
Well, on the whole, I mean, all setter breeds pretty much do the same. You've got the Irish setter, the English setter, the Gordon setter, and the Irish red and white. They all do have their own little characteristics. I'm not going to go all into them because I have to admit I don't fundamentally know every little single difference. I know more. You see more of the English and Irish setters and Gordons rather than the Irish red and whites. But some people may not know the Irish red and whites. They're predominantly white with solid bits of, I suppose, ginger, the Irish setter colouring on them. Obviously, people will know the black and tan of the Gordon, the different varying Belton colours of the English setter, motley colours. And then you've obviously got the red or Irish setter. But the setter breeds tend to, obviously, set birds. They're more cat-like than the English pointers. They like to pin their birds. So when the dogs are quartering, and when they're quartering, they are going at distance. So we are talking, they could be going out 80, 100 meters each side of you. And this is when you always work them into the wind, generally, unless you're working a downwind or a cheek wind. But generally, you want to work them into the wind, and they'll be going, 80 to 100 meters each side. When they might, what they'll do is they'll indicate that there's some birds ahead of them. Now, depending upon how far those birds are and how strong the wind is and the scents being brought back to them, a very good, and I suppose experienced dog, because a pup won't do this straight away. My bitch Inca does it. She will indicate, and then if the birds she knows are too far away, she will then flick off and carry on quartering and take a couple more cuts before she can get close to those birds and actually pin them, so that she goes on point and those birds are only maybe 3 meters in front of her. That in a way is absolutely fantastic for a shooting day, because you're not wasting any ground. So, and by that, I mean, so if birds are miles ahead, and if you had, which is typical, I have to say, of an English pointer will more likely road in, i.e. it strides in, carries on going, keeps on going until it gets to its birds. Whereas generally, and I might get told off by English pointer enthusiasts for this, but but that's the way I see it. But generally, with an a setter breed, particularly English setters, obviously from my experience, is that they want to pin these birds. So therefore, by ignoring those birds ahead of them, and they're taking another cut, they're not going to waste ground, because they could find other birds on their beat, and therefore you haven't missed any birds. And that obviously helps with grouse counting. It helps out on a shoot day, because the worst thing a gun wants to do is walking out to a point that could be far off and then walks up some birds. And you're told on a shoot day, if you're going over pointers and setters, is please do not shoot wild birds, because that can also damage is probably the wrong word, but it's not very good for the actual working dog. So by taking this extra cut, they can then find other birds, and then also get closer. So actually on a shoot day, when they're pinning the birds and the birds are only 3 meters ahead of them, it's far better for your guns, because they're going to be closer to them to shoot, and therefore more likely to shoot them. Sorry, that's in a bit of a garbled way, but hopefully that's understandable.
I've definitely kept up with you, and I know from the videos some of our ladies prep and videos you have shared with me, watching your setters work, watching setters work, is like, for me, it's terrifying. We try to keep our dogs quite close, and your dog's like, it's covering a field in one stride. And it's unreal. And like you said, you haven't been training for months and months and months in your garden, so you think, okay, well, I've got 80-20 chance here of having some control of the little monkey. You are training on live games, so there's so much going on that you have to think about. But explain to me a little bit more, now that I understand why the setters doing what they're doing. What makes the English pointer a pointer and not a setter? And sorry, pointer people, I need to understand what they do that makes it a different name.
Yeah, no, I'll try and explain. It's quite difficult, because I always think, fundamentally they're very similar. They're going out, they run in exactly the same pattern, quartering and everything into the wind, and obviously they're there to go and run and find and point game. But I suppose it's more there's very small little tendencies, differences and characteristics, and one I've touched on was the roading in of a pointer. So a pointer will stand there on point, and I don't know why. I don't know why they call them setting and pointing. I still say, when I talk about my setters, I still say, oh, they're on point. I suppose with a setter, they crouch down. They quite often, characteristic is they crouch down into the ground. So sometimes in the heather, if a setter's crouched down on point, you can't see it. Whereas a pointer stands very tall, on point, and it's a beautiful sight to see it on a heather moorland or even on a partridge field, as a pointer standing there really proud and on point. But pointers, quite characteristic of them is, like I said, they like to road into their game. So they'll take a scent or they'll get a scent, and it can be quite far off, and they really like to stride in and take you into that game and can take them quite take you in from quite a far distance, and I'd say that's the biggest, for me, is the biggest difference really, is the way they stand on point, and different, compared to a setter crouching down, and then the setter being cat-like and wanting to pin their birds, and the English pointers wanting to kind of road in. And I suppose as well, we also, when I'm training my setters, is because I'm aware that I don't want them to learn to road in and pull into their game, I will actually teach them to, I'll stop them and I'll recast them so that they actually learn that they can't keep on roading into that game. They've got to cover and do their groundwork. So yeah.
I suppose then in similarities to a Springer Spaniel that's beaten, is like, just because you know something's there doesn't stop you covering the ground that's in front of you. You still need to do the work.
Yeah, exactly.
The aim is not to get to the bird and miss all this land in between.
Exactly. And I mean, to be fair, that can get you in huge amounts of trouble if you're competing in field trials on partridge. Partridge are very unforgiving. So for a good dog, on stubble, especially on partridge, they have got to do their groundwork, and that means doing flat quartering, that's flat and wide to cover their beat, but also make sure that they cover all the ground, because I mean, it's happened to me. My dog wasn't doing the groundwork well enough. She's pulled forward or whatever and missed birds. And unfortunately, in a field trial, you are out. It's thank you very much. Pick up, please.
So many things in a field trial they want to throw you right out for.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, the same can be said of a shoot day. You don't want to miss birds and miss those opportunities for your guns, because quite often guns will be paying you to shoot over your dogs. So therefore, your dogs, if they're either going and doing unproductives, which is when a dog goes on point but there's actually nothing there, it could be old scent, or the dog misses game, then your guns aren't going to be very happy. So yeah.
So now that we've got a bit more of an understanding of like the English pointer and the bow setters, for a lot of people, I suppose, they're like, oh my god, I've seen them, they're beautiful, like I love yours to death. I love not your littlest boy, but your middle little boy, so much. He's adorable. I could spend forever with him. But they're not an easy dog to have as a weekend pet / estate dog / canny cross dog, are they? They're not that type of dog.
Not at all. I know, obviously, as you've seen, they are brilliant around the house. They're brilliant with children. I mean, my lot, they live out during the day and come in at night, and they're very good at just settling down, and when they're not being used. And they're so soft, the best temperaments, and really loving in that way. But you take them out either to work or just, I mean, I don't actually walk my dogs, so the walking scents the way. And I know a lot of people with setters and pointers who don't as well. And that's purely because it's not because they don't have a good recall or anything. It's because these dogs want, as you've seen in my clips, is that they want, they go at speed. And they will naturally work the wind in a fenced paddock. It's just the working bred dogs, it's so naturally built into them to work and hunt and find game, that to go on a walk down a footpath or something like that, it's boring to them. And they will constantly, if there's any scent of a pheasant, rabbit, hare or anything, they will want to go and, point it. So the easiest thing and the way to manage these dogs is really, I'm very lucky. I have access to some fenced in fields, and that's what they predominantly go and get exercised in every day. And while I'm out there, I'll do some recall, I'll do some sit stays, I'll do some drop whistles at distance, and just keep that kind of basic obedience ticking over. But on the whole, they can go and do what they like. They might go and point on a blackbird in the hedge, but that's just what they do. Whereas also, because they're allowed, in a way, that's their fun area, when I take them out to train or work them, then that's when I expect that, they can't do a false point or something like that. They've got to learn about the different scents, and I can tell from the type of way they're pointing, whether it's a hair, whether it's actually a point at all, or there is actually something there. And you learn that obviously by working the dogs. I mean, people will be surprised, but I will only perhaps train. I mean, at the moment, my dogs effectively are on holiday. We've come back from the grouse moors, where obviously we were out every day. But now I'm not doing the autumn trials on partridge in Norfolk next week, just because of work. I can't do it. And so really, I've got no real need for them until next February, March time, when I start grouse counting, and I'll probably go up to Scotland for some trials and start working them again. So they effectively go on holiday. I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't do a spot of training every time, but I might only train once a week, twice a week, and take them out. So it is a different type of dog to manage, really.
And like you said, if you haven't got access to the land that you need to train on, or the reason to train in that way, they are at the moment more like a pet to you, but they're your pet that needs a ginormous garden.
Yeah, well, yeah, yes, they do. I mean, I don't have a huge garden. They have access to a dog, a kind of fenced-in dog run.
Yeah.
But yeah, but to be able to take them out and give them that freedom to run. They're not dogs. If you spend a lot of time putting obedience into them, especially English setters, and you're hard on them. Some dogs, they will just back off. They're very slow maturers. I think I might have commented on a post probably a couple of years ago when Jago, my middle dog, was only 6 months old. I'd only then at 6 months, and okay, I hadn't been training him every day to do this, but I did it little and often. And I was really pleased because at 6 months old, I was able to step away from him without a lead on and take 2 steps away, and he sat and stayed for 10 seconds. It's that kind of thing. It's very slow. People who have labs and spaniels and then think, oh, let's try a setter or a pointer. They find it, I think, very hard to adjust because it's a completely different mentality. They are very much dogs. Jago's now 2. He's not quite still 100% steady on his birds, but he's getting there. And you very much have to think about the conditions that you're training in. I put myself under so much pressure this year to get him rock steady and ready for trials or ready for working on a shoot up on the moors. And I probably put too much pressure on myself back in March and this summer, saying, right, I've got this time, I've got a week up on the moors each time, I'm going to do it. And we didn't. And the reason being is because in March, the conditions weren't right for a young dog. The weather was terrible, which meant the grouse weren't behaving. The cockbirds were springing up everywhere, flying around and then coming back in again and landing in front of him. So poor dog just didn't have the opportunity for a clean point in production, and so kept on chasing his birds. And I have them on a long line to steady him, but he kept on chasing and not being steady. In the summer, he got very sticky on his birds because he's got a very good nose, and up in northern England there's far more birds than there are in Scotland, and he literally, and the broods were big, and it was literally as he'd been hit by a brick wall of scent, and he just couldn't move. And I do get frustrated sometimes and everything, but you've got to go, right, okay, take a deep breath, and you've just got to work with it's going back to working with the dog in front of you. So anyway, I went up to Scotland where the brood sizes were smaller, there was less grouse, and suddenly I had a different dog on my hands. He was running, he was working out old scent, new scent, and it was just absolutely amazing. And the difference and what I could do in 2 or 3 days, given what I'd had before and not been able to achieve anything, was amazing. And he learned in 2 or 3 days so much. And I was just, it's a shame I couldn't have stayed up to consolidate what we're doing, and he's now going to have to wait until next year. And I mean, I might get up to the moors a little bit over the next few months to hopefully consolidate and everything. But yeah, it's very much working with the conditions you've got and you're having to take those into consideration all the time about why your dog's behaving in a certain way. I think far more so than spaniels and labs, because they are setters and pointers are so sensitive to the way the wind's going, what scent's like on the ground, and you know, some people, if their dog's being sticky and sticky on scent, they'll be like, oh bloody dog, it's no use. When in actual fact, if you take into consideration what brood sizes are, how much birds there are, you kind of go, yeah, that's the reason why. And there's no point, I think, sometimes fighting your dog. So I've come back and Jago's been a bit sticky on the stubble because there's loads of hair scent around and everything. And he's stopping. And yes, I'm taking him out once a week, twice a week on it to get him running through and getting used to that. But I have actually said to myself, I would like to do more with him, but there's no point, because at the end of the day, all I'm doing is fighting him, and it's just not fair. So I'm just taking my time. And this is why he may not be ready as a complete dog until maybe another year. But I'm far happier to do that and take the time.
It's mad, isn't it? Because like you're talking like working from maybe like months ahead in your training process and your training thinking. Obviously doing stuff in the week, but thinking about different elements and having access to those elements at different points throughout the year. And then with our like spaniels and labs, we are like not short-sighted, that's the wrong word, but we're so focused on doing so much every single week with that we don't have that, not foresight. What am I trying to say here? We don't think about, well, what am I going to be doing in March with the dog? Because we're thinking, well, what are we doing in September with the dog?
Yeah. It's very much like that. I mean, I'm like that with my spaniels. It's very much, you know, you've got a shorter, because you're packing in more into a shorter space of time. Whereas with these dogs, it's, I suppose it's, again, the reason for, you know, or the aspect of having access to ground that you can train on. And so I can't always be up on the moors, or a certain type of ground might suit the dog better to get him going. And you want to give the dog the best possible conditions to get the best out of them when they're young, to get them going. You know, for me with him, because he's got such a good nose, there's no point in taking him to a place and where there's so much scent, because I'm just not going to achieve anything. And he will get completely frustrated, completely confused, and you know, could shut down on me, and I will get frustrated and everything as well. So you're just always thinking of the best conditions that you can train a young dog on, really.
I think it was Sam Thornycroft Taylor who said to me about the dogs when they were young, and I was taking them out on their first like beat, and I was going out without, it was the first time I was going out, I think, without Dad, if I remember rightly. So I was really nervous anyway about getting back out there without him, and how I would feel about that, but also the fact that I didn't have that person like constantly mentoring me. You've been able to say, you know, the dog's doing this, and going, right, do this. You know, like a second, like almost like having a trainer with me whilst I work the dogs. And she said, I took the dog out, I took our Buddy, and he was brilliant. And then second or third day we'd been out, because again, you know, spaniels, they can be out 3 times in a week, and he was started like, not play up, he was just getting really like, I know what I'm doing now, apparently, after 3 days.
I don't have to listen.
And she said to me something, she said, oh, you're better off taking a new dog out at the end of the season when there are less birds than there are at the beginning of the season when there's loads of birds and there's loads of scent. And I thought, you know, simple things, we don't know what we don't know. And until somebody pointed that out to me, I hadn't thought, well, of course, that makes more sense. He wouldn't be doing what he's doing, where there's thousands of birds in every field in front of him. So, you know, he's literally like, it doesn't matter where I go, I'm doing my work. And for you, it's almost a similar thing, isn't it? You're working on live game all the time, training. It's a hard place for a young dog to be.
Oh, absolutely. And this is the thing, I mean, this is why setters and pointers you don't see on a normal shoot, because basically there's just too much game. They're not suited to that kind of environment. They weren't bred for it. What they were bred for is, you know, running wide or ranging to cover wide distances on ground that there isn't that much game. Hence your grouse moors and stuff. but it is very much that you're picking the right conditions to train for that, for that particular what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, it's I mean, like, as you know, I just love working them. Their power, their speed, their style, and there's nothing better than kind of, I mean, I prefer going up onto the grouse moors. The views are amazing, but it's the same on partridge. If you've got a very good running dog, just to watch them, I mean, the freedom in a way that they give me. And I have to say, I've got spaniels as well, but I have to say the setters, my English setters, are my favourites. I probably get more pleasure, to be absolutely honest, from working them. I don't have as much opportunity to work them as I do the spaniels, but I think it's more the pleasure and the freedom that they allow me. And also with them, you're running them always on the brink of being in control, out of control. We rely on them far more to work and be independent of us than, say, the spaniels and labs. As we've both said, you work your spaniels really close to you. The setters and pointers we want, way out. So as long as I have a stop or drop whistle, recall and a turn, and they will be obedient at 100 meters, that's all I'm aiming for. Which sounds, yeah, it's just that, but
I can remember being on another shoot, and there was a HPR and going out both sides quite distance, and I was like, you're basically covering the distance from in front of his owner out past 5 other beaters and their dogs and back, and then doing the other thing. I was like, you might as well just do this section on your Todd.
Yeah.
You're literally covering the whole area. But yeah, and it is that, like you just said, that knowing you, am I in control or am I not control, when my dog is literally, I can't even think about running after it. It is already too far away.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, this is why we use long lines to start with, and we're not talking long lines of being 10 meters. We're talking, I use washing lines of 40 meters plus, because we want them working wide. So we want to, obviously what we'll do is start them off with a small beat, and then gradually, as they become more and more obedient, you obviously let them go out further and all the rest of it. But it's the stopping at distance, which I think, people have the similar problems with the spaniels. I think probably more, I always compare an English setter to a Cocker Spaniel, is that they want to be with you. And so it's quite hard to teach the distance element, and especially dropping at, 40, 50 meters. Hence why a number of us have thunderers for that. It's that emergency stop, because we need, a normal whistle sometimes won't get them. But it's something that I'm with my little pup. I am working on the drop a lot, because I didn't do it much with Jago. And so Jago, with Inca, I can drop her 80, 100 meters easily. Whereas Jago, she just got it. Jago, he's far keener on his birds, and just once he's on a mission, he is on a mission. And he's I mean, he does listen and everything, but if I try and drop him at, say, 40 meters, he'll turn and look at me and then come running in and drop at my feet. Whereas at 20 meters, he will drop. So it's just one of those things. But the beauty, another beauty of I love when I'm out working them, is that, and you see it in trials, or whether you're working or you've got two of them together, is we have what people you won't have in the Spaniel labs. We have dogs backing one another. And you can have multiple dogs backing if you're working 3 or 4 at a time. And it happens with the HPRs, obviously, because they're pointing as well. But the beauty is you have a dog that goes on point, and then it's backed by another dog, which is lovely to see. And some dogs don't back. It's just, they just don't. You can teach a dog to back, but I prefer to see it when it's naturally done. And I actually had my young one, he pointed, I think he backed Inca at 4 or 5 months old. And I was just like, yes, it was on a pipit in a, grassy field, but it was so lovely to see, and just see how that working ability is so natural to them. All we're doing is manipulating and building that relationship and team with them, so that they work for us rather than work for themselves. But otherwise, the quartering into the wind, the pointing, everything is just natural. And that's, I think, why I love the breed so much, is the absolute natural ability of them.
When you say back, I'm assuming that means that they mimic the person on point.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I should have clarified that. Yeah.
No,
So
I think it's we all do it, don't we? We think, oh,
yeah,
people understand what I'm on about, but again, like if you're not from that world,
yeah. Oh, absolutely, and it's a different language.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so talking about like if there's people listening to this now and they're like, these sound amazing. I do have access to the type of environments that Lucy is talking about, but I'm inexperienced with dogs. Is this some other breed where you can like, everyone's got to start somewhere, so you can learn to do it, or do you need access to the right environment plus access to somebody who can help you train them?
Well, this is the thing, is because we're such a small community of people that have and work the setter and pointer breeds. It's not like you have trainers that are experienced with these breeds everywhere, like spaniels and labs. And I must say, I wouldn't advise people with these with setters and pointers going to your standard lab and spaniel trainers unless they have got them and worked them themselves. Because, not being funny, these guys just, and I'm going to sound rude here, but they don't really know what they're doing. And I've had a friend of mine who, well, we met on the LWDG actually. She had an Irish setter. She bought it, did a working one, didn't have a clue what she was going in for, and was just like, what the hell do I do with this dog? And anyway, we met up nearly coming up 2 years ago, and I've introduced her to a number of people, and she is now trialing her. She's actually going to Norfolk next week, and she's doing really, really well with him. But she actually, the reason I wanted to say this was she went to let's call them a standard Gundog trainer, and she was getting frustrated because, of course, the dog was being in a group lesson with spaniels and labs. The dog was, I think Cedric was six months old, and there was spaniels and labs in there that were, let's say, 3 months old, and doing everything correct, walking to heel, sitting and staying for long periods of time, and retrieving. And this Irish setter wasn't doing any of that. His concentration span was that of a gnat, and that is compared to the others. And that is actually characteristic of them because they grow up so much slower. You do everything at a slower pace. They are not natural retrievers, so that isn't really a reward to them. And she was getting frustrated because he wasn't doing what all these much younger dogs were doing. So you do need to pick the right person to go and see. And I have to say, sadly, there aren't many. There aren't any, I would say, professional setter and pointer trainers, unfortunately. We do now have a number of HPR people who have handled HPRs at trials and stuff, who have now jumped ship and come over into the setter and pointer community and have now worked English pointers and various breeds of setters. And there is one in particular, Rory Major of Bryant's-Croft Gundogs, which in Lincolnshire, that a lot of people have known. And I'm not sure though whether he does one-to-ones or anything like that, but he's a great person to chat to from a trainer point of view. But failing that, what I would say is the English Setter Club and the Pointer Club do run training days, and there are a couple of training days throughout the year. Another great thing, and more people are doing, is actually coming and seeing a field trial. A field trial for pointers and setters, I'd say, is different to the spaniels and labs. It very much shows exactly how we work, how they're bred to work, and what we do if we're not trialing them. So, and you can see exactly, you see the breeds also competing together. We compete in brace, i.e. 2 dogs, will go, I shouldn't say against one another, I get told off, it's with one another. And as I said, all the breeds, except if you're in a breed stake, and then that's only, you'll have your English setter breed stake, your Irish setter breed stake. And that is a great way to come and see if you're interested. And we have had a few LWDG people come to the trials who have got either GSPs or other breeds, and they've been really, really interested in seeing them. And everyone's also commented on how welcoming everyone is, because we're such a small community. We want more people to get involved and run these dogs. And so it's been really lovely meeting them. And a few of them, we've got, I think we've got 5 or 6 more people, kind of join the community and start working their dogs. So, which is really lovely. I'd say I'd say, get involved, come and do it. They are amazing dogs. And you have to put a lot of work in, like you do with any dog, and you might not reap the benefits so quick as a spaniel or lab. It may take 3 or 4 years, but the achievement and the enjoyment afterwards is absolutely amazing. So,
and of course, anyone who's listening to this who's either in our fan community or a society member can always hit you up too.
Absolutely. I'm afraid if I see a setter or pointer post on the LWDG, I do jump on it. And I love to help people. And I'm sure there might be a few people listening here who have been in contact with me, or I've been in contact with them, and people will know that I do, as you can tell, chat about it a lot. And if you do want to chat, you have to tell me to stop sometimes, or I tell myself to stop, because all I want to do is help people out and point them in the right direction to people I know that might be in their location, so that they can help and get the best out of their dogs. But we're a wonderful load of people, and we just want to see more pointers and setters worked, and work to the what the breed was bred for.
Yeah, because I think the saddest thing that could happen is that we lose the breeds, because they become such a small breed that it almost becomes like an inbreed, doesn't it? Because there's just not enough, the lines will become too close. But anybody listening who wants to get hold of you, I know a lot of gentlemen listen to this and maybe aren't part of our fan community or our society. How do they get hold of you if they're like, look, I just want to ask Lucy some questions?
You can easily I'm on Instagram. I have a business page because I'm an events organizer, completely different to my passions, but it's Lucy Clare Events. Or otherwise, I do have my personal Insta page, which is Lucy Hall 51, and you'll see lots of dogs and what have you, but otherwise I'm also on Facebook, just normal Lucy Hall, or otherwise I don't know if I'm allowed to give my mobile number. You can ask Joe for my mobile number. I'm happy for people to text, message, WhatsApp, whatever. So yeah, anyone's welcome.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast, because I always feel like the setter community within the LWDG, as you've made clear across the UK, is small. So sometimes it's really hard for us to put a lot on this for the setter people. I would love to see more people even just being aware of it and looking at it, because some people rule out the breeds when in fact they do have the opportunity to be involved in them and might actually really love being part of them.
Oh, absolutely. I think definitely it would be lovely to be able to showcase what these dogs can do. And I think probably the easiest way to do it is potentially do an LWDG shoot day or something like that. And maybe we could do a demo or something on a combined thing with labs and spaniels as well. So food for thought.
I definitely want us to do some more. And even if we look back to last year in the Welsh Game Fair, when we just showed a little bit of the difference between the spaniels and the retrievers and your gorgeous setter, it was interesting even in that small area to see the different way they behave. I definitely think we should do something. We've before we leave this podcast, obviously you're our regional organizer for the Midlands, but that doesn't mean you're just dealing with setters for the Midlands today. You are the regional organizer for everything that we're going to have going on next year. People can contact you the same ways, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd love people to contact and, you know, get in touch about what potentially they want to do next year. I did organise an HPR day down south. I'd love to organise another, you know, potentially another one next year for maybe further a bit up north. And then maybe some more, you know, general days. I know, obviously, the other girls have organised some fabulous working test days, and Sam did her wonderful heel work masterclass. So, you know, I'd love to be able to do more for people in the Midlands. So if you've got any ideas, then hit me up.
Yeah. And the Midlands, for anybody who's listening, from a regional perspective, the UK is roughly cut into Scotland in the north, vast amount of space. Wales in the west, vast amount of space. The Midlands, pretty much everything that's north of the M25, and the southeast, which is pretty much everything south of the not south of the M25, M4, but doesn't go down like past, shall we say, Bristol. They are really rough areas, and they pretty much, you can go into any different area. You don't have to stay in your area. You can go and do any event anywhere, but they're just loose areas that you can find going on in. So Lucy basically covers probably from like Yorkshire-ish down to like London-ish, maybe over to Wales-ish. We'll put it. So it is a huge area, but if you have any ideas of anything that you want to go on in that region, talk to Lucy first and she'll be there to help you.
Also, just going to quickly add as well is that for the more kind of, let's say, HPR point and setter kind of events, they obviously are going to, there's be fewer of them, but also people, we do need people to travel. And for me, as I'm a point and setter person, I have to travel 3 or 4 hours sometimes to go and do my training and what have you. But because Spanier Labs, they're lucky because there's lots of trainers on doorsteps and stuff, so people don't need to travel far. But I'm afraid for the HPR people and the point and setter people, I'm afraid travel does come into it. And if, you know, there is 2 or 3 hours travel, I'm afraid sometimes just to go and get that really good day of training, it is definitely worth the travel. Just wanted to pop that in.
Yeah, and I think that's the same for like even for the Spaniards and the labs and things like that. Like I live in South Wales, and sometimes I have to travel over an hour and a half just to go beating because isn't the setup locally for driven days. So it's about like committing to it a little bit, isn't it? You know, we have to go to where the events can happen rather than expecting the event to come to us.
Exactly. And I think, you know, if you want to get the training, you just have to put a little bit of effort in, put a bit of time in, and that's just unfortunately the way it is.
Plus, I always think like when I've gone to places further away, I've had to work my dog over different terrain, like stuff that's quite close to me, you know, is very, you know, the Brecon Beacons. I'm not allowed to call it that anymore, apparently, according to Welsh Assembly Government. I've got to call it Banau Brycheiniog. Good luck with that. Everybody does this in Wales. You know, we've got very hilly terrain, very wet terrain. You know, it is that way. And then you can take the dogs to go and work somewhere like Hereford, and it becomes far gentler, far bigger, and you know, it's good for the dogs to go to different places because it goes back to what our experts keep on talking about all the time, which is proof your dog in different places. So
absolutely,
it's absolutely worth doing it. So thank you very much for your time, Lucy. We love you, and we love you so much for all the hard work you do within the group as an organizer, but also as our HPR person. For anybody who's listening who isn't part of our society membership, please just join our Facebook fan community. You literally look for Ladies Working Dog Group fan community. It's a free group for anybody who just wants to like know and find out more about us, and maybe don't know if they want to get involved yet and want to sort of like sit on the outskirts and just watch what's going on, it's a perfect place for you to go. You get loads of involvement in the community, meet lots of people, before maybe making a step on to becoming one of our members. So thank you everybody for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this. Even if you don't have setters, we hope you've enjoyed finding out more about them and being more informed and understanding. Even if it's not something that you'll use in the future, it might be something that helps you help a friend decide whether they want to go down that route or not. And also, everything we learn is always good for us. So we shall speak to you all next week, and hope you have a fabulous week with you and your dog. Goodbye. That's a wrap on today's episode of Found It, Fetched It. Thanks for listening. If you found our conversation valuable, please could you do us a favour and subscribe and leave a review so other people just like me and you can find the podcast. For the ladies out there who are passionate about gun dog training and want more tips, live sessions and a community that gets it, you're welcome to join our membership. Just visit www.thelwdg.com to learn more. Until next time, keep working with your gun dog and take care.